How global trade routes decide world power. Most people think world power comes from armies, or money, or population size. But long before missiles, elections, or stock markets decide anything, trade routes do. Because if you control how goods move, you influence who grows, who slows, and who breaks under pressure. Empires didn't rise because they were loud. They rose because they controlled movement. And that hasn't changed. Trade routes are older than countries. Before borders, people moved. Food, raw materials, ideas, rivers, coastlines, and narrow passages became natural highways. Power didn't invent trade routes. Trade routes created power centers. Cities that sat on key routes became rich. Those that didn't depended on others. This is the first rule of global power. Geography decides opportunity long before politics does. Not all routes are equal. Some places can be bypassed. Others can't. These are called chokepoints, narrow sea passages, key ports, transit hubs. When trade must pass through a small number of locations, those locations gain leverage, even without military force. If trade slows there, the world feels it. That's not influence. That's control through dependency. Over 80% of global trade by volume moves by sea. That means ports matter more than capitals. Shipping lanes matter more than borders. Countries that dominate maritime trade don't need to announce power. They host it. Control the ports, the logistics, the insurance, the scheduling, and you quietly shape global commerce. This is why maritime nations historically outperform landlocked ones. Not because they're smarter, but because they're positioned better. In the past, fortresses guarded borders. Today, ports guard economies. The world's most powerful ports aren't just places where ships dock. They are data hubs, a logistics brains, coordination centers. A delayed port doesn't just slow ships. It disrupts factories, a retail, an energy supply, food prices. Ports don't fire weapons. They apply pressure silently. Manufacturing doesn't settle randomly. It clusters where inputs arrive efficiently, outputs leave cheaply. Timelines are predictable. That's why industrial power follows trade routes, not ideology. Countries that sit at the center of global routes naturally become exporters, logistics coordinators, supply chain anchors. Others plug into those systems and lose leverage in the process. This is how economic hierarchies form without conquest. Trade doesn't stop at physical movement. Goods must be insured, financed, settled, priced. This creates a second layer of trade routes, financial ones. Currencies, banking systems, and settlement networks decide who can trade easily, who faces friction, who absorbs risk. When a country's financial system becomes the default for trade, it gains influence even when goods never touch its soil. This is why financial hubs matter as much as ports. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Global trade power doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from being irreplaceable. If the world depends on you, rerouting is costly. Alternatives are slow. Disruption causes panic. That dependency becomes leverage, even if you never use it. The most powerful trade nations don't threaten disruption. They let others fear it. Certain countries feel unavoidable in global trade, not because they're aggressive, but because the system grew around them. Routes, standards, schedules, insurance models, and supply chains adapted to their presence. Removing them wouldn't just change trade. It would rewrite the map. That's why trade power lasts longer than political popularity. Trade routes are shifting, but slowly. New corridors are emerging. Technology is reducing friction. Regional trade is growing, but choke points remain, and geography still matters. The future won't erase trade routes. It will re-rank them. Countries that adapt their infrastructure, logistics, and systems will gain influence quietly. Others will wake up too late. World power doesn't begin with force. It begins with flow. Who moves goods? Who settles payments? Who connects producers to consumers? Trade routes decide who grows during stability and who survives disruption. You don't need to control the world to shape it. You just need to sit where the world passes through. Trade power is about dependency, not dominance. Which choke point would disrupt the world the fastest? Subscribe for fact-based documentaries on how global systems really work, and let us know in the comments which trade route you think matters most today.